the Springville Planning Commission. First item to take care of tonight would be an approval of the agenda. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda or any motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda is approved as written. We have minutes attached from the January 10th meeting. Are there any corrections to those minutes that have not already been submitted to staff?
Nope.
Okay. And do we have a motion for the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are also approved. We do have one item on the consent agenda tonight. The consent agenda includes items that are administrative actions for no additional discussion is needed on these items. If they are approved, then the recommendations in the staff reports become the action of the commission. Call for objection or comment will be made on the consent agenda items, and if there's any opposition or comment, then the item would be taken off of the consent agenda and put on the regular agenda for discussion. Do we have any comments or discussion on the consent agenda item or a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda item is approved. We have no administrative items tonight. We do have 2 legislative items tonight. Each one will have a public hearing. First on the legislative agenda would be Lafferty Communities requesting amendments to the Westfield Central New Neighborhood Plan to eliminate the rear setback for cottage lot types. And do we have a presentation tonight? Okay, looks like we have Director Yost.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. To refresh everyone's memory, the Westfield Central Neighborhood Plan encompasses generally the area shown on this. This is just an early illustrative diagram, but it is located at the corner of 700 South and 950 West, about 20 acres directly across the street from Meadowbrook Elementary. For background, the application seeks to reduce the rear setback to 0 feet, and that in effect would permit that the 3-story, 35-foot height for the entire building from front setback to rear setback. And I'll talk through the geometry of that a little bit later. This is the document as received by the applicant detailing the sought amendments to accomplish their desires to reduce that rear setback. It would, as mentioned, take this rear setback from 30 to 0, and that's the rear setback to the primary or principal structure, as noted by E. And then to eliminate the setbacks for accessory buildings, as there wouldn't be any site area left for accessory buildings, and that the requirement or the width of the building back wing here would be eliminated because the principal structure could come all the way to the rear setback, or the rear property line, excuse me. We've previously amended at the applicant's request the interior side yard setback from 5 to 3, where there was an adjacent 5-foot side yard with a reciprocal easement. So there would always, on the narrow side, you'd have the 5 feet of the adjacent property for a total of 8 feet minimum. And then before that, in May, the staff initiated amendments to the code, and the amendments to the cottage lot type renamed the front corner setback to corner side setback and reduced the parking and waste from the front facade setback from 40 to 28, shown here and here, those amendments that we made. That created a buildable building envelope here. Otherwise, if you were 40 feet from the front of the building and the building's 12 foot back, then now you're at 52 feet back and you've got a 65-foot deep lot. 13 feet does not make a parking swap. To specifically for this application, something to consider is that the proposed cottage plans were presented previously as part of or as an attachment to the application for the zone text amendment for the reduced side yard setback. At that point, staff didn't recognize that the proposed plans were non-compliant in terms of the rear setback. And we discovered this when the applicant sent the plans for design review prior to submitting building permit applications. To clarify, the inclusion of the plans in this previous zone text amendment application did not constitute an application for approval of those plans themselves, nor did the council's approval of that side yard setback amendment constitute an approval of the building plans. Nonetheless, staff regrets, regret not recognizing the noncompliance earlier and alerting the applicant, and we recognize that oversight may have a bearing on the way you decide tonight.
When did that happen, that oversight?
End of November or beginning of December, somewhere in that range. I didn't look up the exact meeting date. So next, in terms of analysis of the proposal, we'll first look at the original intent of the Westfield Central New Neighborhood Plan, and it's described in the staff report. Part of that is that cottages were intended to be smaller, single-family detached units with some degree of private yard, and the proposed amendment really compromises that intent by limiting the width of the rear yard at the rear wing or rear building wing, and especially compromises that intent by facilitating the construction of essentially full-size home-sized cottages. And we'll discuss that a little more later with an analysis of their proposed unit types. On visual impact, this is the diagram that helps us understand the massing differences between the between the current lot type standards and the proposed amendments. So the decreased rear setback increases the mass of the homes by increasing the amount of the footprint of the house that can go up to 3 stories. Right now, the rear setback of the primary building, which is this front mass of the primary building, this is your rear property line. This primary building has to be 30 feet off the rear property line. And that building, the primary structure, may extend to 35 feet in maximum height. And an accessory building, such as a garage, can have a rear setback of 0. But that accessory building can only have a maximum height of 2 stories. And it can be connected to the primary structure by this rear building wing that has a maximum width of 15 feet. The minimum depth of the lots does in some cases make that rear wing small, but it does serve to reduce the apparent mass of the building, especially at the side street, as shown in this image as you come up 950 West, or you're on 900 South, or at a home adjacent or across the street. The building mass of the side elevation of the building is readily apparent to the surrounding streets and to the surrounding homes.
For that smaller 2-story home in the back, if you were to build a breezeway in between the two, would it be non-compliant, or does
No,
it
you can. That's what this small wing here, it's called the building rear wing in the standards. It can have a breezeway between it, but the maximum width can be 15 feet.
Okay.
So under the proposed amendments, and to be fair, and these diagrams are not a representation of Lafferty's proposed architectural plans. These are simply building envelope diagrams showing the maximum extent of the building envelope allowed under the current and the proposed setback standards. So under the requested amendments, this full 35-foot mass could extend uninterrupted to the rear property line, presenting a substantially larger building volume to the side elevation than under the current code. And especially because the majority of these cottage lots are across 900 South and 950 West from existing homes, this change is readily apparent to those existing residents, contrary to or more so than the previously requested and withdrawn request to extend the height of the loft homes, which were on the interior of the block and less visible. These are on the exterior and intended to provide a transition between the existing neighborhood and the more intense products located interior to these 20 acres. The next question is the question of diversity and affordability. The intent, again, was to provide small and smaller detached units to that were differentiated from the average or the rest of the offerings in the Westfields, so that somebody wishing to live in a single-family detached home on its own lot could have an option to do that in a smaller unit. The 4 plans that they proposed, and I'm sorry I don't have the numbers of how many times each of these plans are being used on all the lots that are cottage lots, but the 4 plan types range in height from 2 to 3 stories and from square footage from nearly 2,000 to nearly 2,800 square feet, with 3 to 4 bedrooms, 2.5 to 3.5 baths, and optional and type 3 to add an optional 4th bedroom with a roof with a deck next to it. For context, the averages for the 37 single-family houses in the block immediately west, so this is directly south of Meadowbrook and east of the School for the Deaf and Blind, the averages for those 37 homes are 2,332 square feet, 3.6 bedrooms, and 2.6 baths. So you can reach whatever conclusion is apparent there for you individually, but to me, I'm essentially seeing a similar or enhanced bigger house program put on a smaller lot in a smaller envelope. One of the elements that we mentioned in the staff report and that I might mention here is Opticos Design, which is one of the kind of pioneers of missing middle housing and has a lot of expertise in making these projects work. One of the first, they have a list of primary mistakes that are often made, and the first one is that facilitating a build-out scenario that doesn't facilitate livability or affordability. And a couple of the elements that they cite is that you really need to avoid the tall, skinny effect, which is trying to put as much house mass on a small footprint, leading to a house that may seem out of proportion, or reducing the amount of or increasing the amount of intensity at the rear of the building along the alley, where typically in a traditional neighborhood, the building intensity is substantially less adjacent to the alley. And also that a key, again, like the key element on the affordability that is a key mistake that they cite is often being made, that although the density of these type of projects is often greater than the average in a community and the lot size is smaller, often they fail to, or sometimes they fail to deliver real significant gains in terms of affordability because of the desire to fit as much program on them as possible. So that's just a comparison for your information and consideration in terms of the 4 floor plan that the applicant has proposed for the cottages. So our simple staff recommendation is based on the conclusion that the proposed amendments are really contrary to the intent of the neighborhood plan and would directly visually impact the surrounding residents. And we recommend that the Planning Commission recommend denial of the proposed amendments. You have that motion and alternate motions in front of you in your staff report. Do you have any questions for me?
When we had previously we had a pretty substantial number of people show up for this Westfields overlay, and one of the things that they all stipulated is that they were opposed to increasing the height at that time, and so I would assume that that's what you're saying here, is that this could potentially increase the height of the homes across the street from them.
It doesn't increase the total height, but it increases, or the maximum height of the home, but it
Right.
increases the amount of the footprint that could be at that three-story
Yeah,
height.
that height, yeah.
So yes.
And in essence, we're talking about compressing the price point options that were proposed early on, right? I mean, originally there was a large number of price point options, but increasing the, what did you call it, the mass of a home increases the price obviously as well. So now there aren't as many options for people to buy. And that was used as an argument to get the thing through in the first place. Yeah, I don't have any more questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we will move to the public hearing for this item.
Or the
Would you like to?
applicant.
Yeah, I suppose we could do that. Would the applicant like to address us before we open the public hearing?
I'm Gary Rhinos with Lafferty Communities, with the builder that is looking at the 64 lots in that southwest quadrant that we're speaking of right now. First, for context, I just wanted to kind of go over the history of what we've been dealing with in terms of the planning and the build process for this particular site. It's a difficult site to be able to build, as I think we all can agree. But in regards to back in May when we submitted these plans, we followed the guidelines essentially that were laid out within the neighborhood agreement, and we've had multiple meetings with Josh in regards to these particular plans, more of the reciprocal easement portion of this, and the height that was in City Council back in September. But with that, we wanted to, some of the internal meetings that we had, none of this was initially described where he was talking about the overall intent of the community in regards to the feel of what he's describing as the mass of each, along 950 West. And essentially what we're looking at, can I gain access to your diagrams that are in here? Okay. Sorry, give me 1 second. There is I don't think it's depicted on here, but in the original neighborhood agreement, there were diagrams that were shown within the top right corner of different examples that you could use, and also the setbacks. So there was a conflict of terms when we were looking at this originally, and we had brought this up, and it was stated that it's only based on the setbacks that the diagrams don't count. But our argument is why would you show the diagrams to something that we could build to in regards to a plan? However, it doesn't meet, those diagrams don't meet your setbacks within your other diagram that you're proposing for the community. So that was a conflict that we definitely had issue with. Now, when we're looking at the community as a whole down the street, we purposely designed 3-story and 2-story, so we had the articulation running down the street, so that it didn't look like what he describes as masses. But when you look at this, it doesn't really bode well for our plans. The building mass, I know he said it's as just a diagram to show this, but it doesn't really show the overarching architecture and what we're trying to accomplish with our plans. So I don't know if he has the actual plan set, but within this presentation. However, on the back of our plans, on the 3-story sets, we have where it drops off above the 2-car garage, and it tapers towards the outside edges of the home on front and back. So it's not this solid block of architecture showing a mass. So we want, and we also want to be clear that, you know, we used an architect that is highly recommended and awarded within California. And so we took a lot of forethought, a lot of time to be able to bring something to the community that would actually benefit those around it. So the way that it's proposed tonight, as Josh was describing, is not what we originally had heard in regards to these boxy type of situations where they want like a true daybreak feel, right? So with these setbacks, we end up having a situation where you have a box, or your primary building envelope is going to be essentially, with the new reciprocal easements, you'd have a 22-foot wide by a 33-foot deep primary 3-story residence, which would essentially be a box if you used an accessory building to the back, which was if it's detached. With the connection of that breezeway within his diagram, you can look at his plan view. We can move that breezeway one side or the other, it doesn't matter, but it's still on one end is going to show a complete perspective of his mass rendering, because the breezeway can go up to the 35-foot max as well. So we don't have a full 3-foot box, you know, or building structure that goes over the top of the garages. They articulate down to give a little bit of you know, different perspective. This is not our intent. So this is, you know, this is grossly not showing the proper architecture which we're trying to do here. So when he was talking about
Did you bring any diagrams of your own to show us so that we could get an idea?
Or what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's in the packet. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, I saw it in the packet, so I figured it was going to be in the presentation. So I apologize. So in that packet, if you look at some of the Plan 3, in essence, we show a 2-story across the back of our above the garage, and it's 3-story within a certain mass. But then we also have balconies, so it's really, it shows a lot of different articulation in what we're trying to accomplish. And again, you know, in using our 2-story plans, we're just trying to give it a bunch of different options for potential buyers and homeowners, ranging from 1,950 feet on a 2-story up to 2,800 feet on a 3-story. So with us trying to eliminate the accessory building and have the zero lot line on the rear, essentially his perspective on the current lot standards with a breezeway is the same principle. He's on zero lot line. I shouldn't say him. The neighborhood agreement is on that zero lot line on the back of the lot and still accomplishing the front setbacks. All of that is the same. So if you imposed our plans within this, it would look very similar to the perspective in which he's trying to state if he attached the breezeway to the garage with living space above. So we have been dealing with this essentially since May, when we brought the plans to the city with, you know, in the intent of purchasing this piece of ground. We don't own it. This would be a major setback for us for not being able to accomplish our plan sets within this building envelope as what we're proposing. We spend a significant amount of money in architectural costs to be able to do this up front. And we're trying to, you know, essentially bring something to the community that is nice and complements and tries to accentuate essentially the community around. We don't want to bring in, you know, small stucco crackerjack boxes within a high density community. We want to bring something that, you know, is a flagship for the surrounding area. So hopefully by looking at and seeing what we're trying to propose with our plans, you will consider for us to be able to, you know, change this amendment in order to for us to be able to use the required building envelope that we need for our plans. So that's what we're asking for tonight.
So in these architectural drawings that you did submit with the packet, it looks like you do have options where you are utilizing that 35-foot height or the 3-story height for the entire length of the building, and others where he does take a step down, either just to that 2-story or to a 2-story and a 1-story option. So I'm seeing all three utilizations in here.
Right, yeah, we don't want, you know, the viewpoint across the street of 950, I think that's 950 West, to be completely uniformed and look like that. So that's the reason why we generated the streetscape in order to be able to show the articulation and what it will look like through the cottage unit sections. So,
That being the case, then we already have plans that don't need that 3 stories all the way down. Then how does it harm the building plan to not have that 35-foot option throughout?
Sorry, I guess I don't understand the question.
You have 3 different options here that I'm seeing. One where it goes all the way across at 3 stories,
Right.
one where it's 3-story, 2-story, and one where it's 3, 2, 1. So if we're just taking out the one where it's 3 stories all the way across, and that still leaves 2 different options that have already been developed that I'm seeing in here that could be included in the neighborhood design. So I'm asking, how does it impact your project if we're just taking out that one option, but you're still left with the other 2?
Well, it essentially it detaches within this breezeway. It negates what we're trying to accomplish as far as the footprint of the home with the garage. So on the base level, on what would be, you know, the slab on grade portion of this, the first floor of this home, it would completely impact the building envelope of it. We'd have to change the design of the building in order to incorporate that. I mean, part of the reason too is that we wanted the reciprocal easement was for the outdoor living space, which if you see in one of our plans here on the floor plans, you can see that it has an inset that already somewhat accomplishes this breezeway viewpoint that is trying to be accomplished. So, you know, it's not within, you know, this 15-foot side yard setback that, you know, that is the standard. But it does give us a better living space and outdoor living space for the residents of the home. So I don't, you know, to answer your question, it would change our entire floor plan on the main floor. I mean, going up, if we're articulating and changing, it doesn't necessarily change the main floor. So we would be going back to redraw.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, so we're dealing with zone ordinance changes, not site plans, and these are great to see what you're envisioning, but what the ordinance proposal is these block images that are up there right now. What attempts have been made to tailor the ordinance to allow for more flexibility without allowing that to be what is possible?
Well, nothing as of right now, because we didn't learn about this until we went into architectural review to be able to start getting the building permit in December. So from May, the plans we did some modifications and changes, and then in September we had the council meeting for the reciprocal easement. Nothing had been spoke of at that time up to that point, and then we get into December for our architectural review meeting, which I don't even know really what that entails because we didn't get that far, and it was told to us that our plans won't work, don't fit within the building setbacks. So we've been dealing with this for quite some time.
With that in mind, are you hoping for a continuance between a denial or recommendation to deny, or a continuance? Would you want a continuance in order to work on some possible, you know, lesser changes to the ordinance that would make things more flexible but not allow block buildings such as that? Or are those changes going to make it so that you have to redo everything anyway? And so
It would. It would be a redraw of plans, which we don't necessarily, feel that we need to incur those costs because this wasn't divulged to us until we go into architectural review. So that's where I feel it's, kind of a bad situation where all leading up all the way to that point, we figure our plans are good and we have no issues, especially something to this magnitude as far as a setback concern that completely alters our plans and costs quite a bit of money to do so, and how much we're already into this, to then go back and have to redraw something that, ultimately doesn't complement what we're trying to accomplish. So that's the reason why we're asking for the amendment change to, meet the plans that are here, because not finding out until the 11th hour is a little hard to take,
How many lots does this impact, and how much of the total
37
lot
lots.
size?
37, we have 64 that we're looking at.
Okay. Another reason?
What's that?
Is there 17 cottages rather? I'm sorry.
It's different.
What do
This
you have
is-
on your?
Just for 17 cottages? What's the 64 lots? Is that all of the housing types?
Yeah, that's all product types. Yes.
All product types?
Yeah. So this doesn't reflect that on the plat, but
Where, can I ask a question?
The cottages there, were they
They're
in the
brick
southeast corner? Was that
it's
kind of where
it's
they
the
were?
southwest quadrant section.
Oh, southwest quadrant. Okay,
It would essentially be in this section here.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That rendition that you're seeing is this streetscape view right here.
So where do the setbacks, where, with the arrow there, can you show me where those setbacks would be? I mean, because we're looking at on the street, we're looking at the frontage of those, but where's the setback?
It would be in the private lanes in the back, essentially, where
Okay.
it's not seen by the public unless you really live there or walk through the
Yeah.
space, is what we're proposing. But additionally, if you do an accessory building, it's essentially the same thing, because if you use a two-car garage as an accessory building, it's still on a zero lot rear setback. It's the same thing. The only difference is as far as a connection point is this, this M as the breezeway.
It's not the same thing, but
Yeah, I mean, in theory, it's the connection point between the primary building and the accessory building or garage. However, we don't have any plans or design for a detached.
So you don't have any plans that would also be a smaller, more affordable home design?
We have the two-story, yeah, a 1950 square foot. That is what we offer as far as what would be I guess
Smaller.
this lower end, I guess.
And what percentage of the cottage lots would be that smaller floor plan?
As far as that two-story plan, I don't know. I don't know that we've done a lot fit per se and got that far into it.
it looks like Plan 2 is the 2-story. And that's the one that extends almost completely at the 2 stories for the whole range.
Which is allowed over the accessory building with the breezeway. Right?
Yeah, with the breezeway.
So
I guess my reasoning for asking where the setbacks are is, I'm concerned about
Did he answer the question?
individuals who are, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm just concerned about individuals who are living in the surrounding community. And, we passed, or we asked not to go to to the 45, wasn't it? 45, I think so. With the setbacks being in the back lane, it would seem to me that this is not going to affect the looks of anything with regard to the outside community. It's going to be the same as.
no, the setbacks in the front are the same and within the regulation. Yeah, it's the 12-foot front setbacks. Yeah, nothing changes on the front.
Right.
It's just a change in massing, so instead of having, it just extends how high that could be. Instead of having it come down
Well, but they would, the height is going to be on the front. So that's where the concern is going to be, not in the back.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, like I said, we have different balconies and things that articulate the front architecture of the, different plans. So that 35-foot shifts a little bit throughout the overall building
And
envelope.
the only place that would be is on a corner lot, with regard to the height, if it was set back in the back, and if it's extended, 30 feet deeper into the lot, then that would be in the back of that, and that would only be affected
On that one
by,
corner.
on one corner.
We go back to the slide that has the layout of the neighborhood.
It's not a correct plat, but
That one.
yeah,
What's different about it?
everything. Yeah.
All right.
So all of this area right here, you have a street that runs through a main artery that runs right here, and then these are the cottage frontage as well as this section here, and then there's 4 lots right here that are also 65-foot deep cottage lots, and these are all 75-foot deep cottage lots.
So it's just along 950 and along the
And this green belt
interior.
section here, which wouldn't impact anything, it's all within community here.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's across the street from those?
This here,
No, the interior.
what?
Yeah,
Just different other product types. I don't. Yeah, this is green belt space, park space, and then
Sure. That's probably better. Then we can all see it. Because it impacts where these are and what their orientation is as to how much impact changing this has on the neighborhood and the neighborhood feel.
Yeah, because even though you don't see the full side of the building except on corners or edges or whatnot, but you don't look at the house only straight direct on either. You look at it from,
All over.
other angles, which does affect the massing.
one thing to consider too, though, is that if you're looking down, say, a 35-foot height front to the 950 West Street, if you do the proposed way that is currently in place, you end up having all of 35 feet of your mass right at the front. So, and it's going to look the same symmetrically all the way down the road versus the articulation that we're trying to.
Well, with the zone change, someone could still do that, except extend that 35 feet all the way to the back. So that's the problem with having a non-tailored zone ordinance change, is that
A global change.
it though you're not planning on doing that, the
Could be
zone
done
ordinance
by-
could be done by someone.
Yes.
There's nothing to stop that.
Not only could it be done, it would be done.
There's nothing to stop it. There's nothing to stop you from doing it, and once it changes. I mean, that's the difference between the site plan and the ordinance.
What you're saying is the setback would relate to other structures as well as to these cottages, is what you're saying?
It would affect the entire cottage product type, regardless
Well,
of.
is it just the cottage type that we're talking about with the setbacks? The others have different setbacks, don't they?
They do.
Yeah, okay.
So essentially what you're looking at is, this is the 950 West.
Mm-hmm.
These are the cottages, these are the cottage lots, and then these 4 here.
And
And those four,
are there other cottages in the community as well, which could be modified by this setback change?
and those 4 cottages there that are against the greenway, where do they front? Do they front to that private drive or to the greenway?
They front to the greenway and then the garage to the back in the private lane.
What's on 82?
Those are 3-pack townhomes,
Okay. How tall are those?
35-foot max.
Okay. Where are the other cottage lots that would also be impacted by this?
These frontage here.
anywhere else in the neighborhood?
I don't know particularly which ones they are, as we're not looking at those. This is the only quadrant that we're looking at right now.
Josh could tell us, I'm sure.
Right, because if we're looking at making a change that could affect not just this quadrant, but the entire project, then we need to know where else it would be affected by that change.
And then,
But if you're able to show us, Josh, that would be helpful.
and then the product type as it expands,
Here.
if we were to do that.
77,
Okay,
and then 21 here.
Which that was a requirement, it has to stay at a two-story, is that correct? Because it's on fence line?
No,
Oh, no, okay.
no.
So so there's a total of 19 cottage lots, it looks like, 17 of which are in our section.
66 is not one, Josh? Is it 66? There's 6,
lot number 66?
it's a house, yeah.
Okay. Any further questions for the applicant? Okay,
Thanks for your time.
thank you. All right, now we can open the public hearing. Do we have a motion for the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, sorry. The public hearing is now open for item number 2 on Lafferty Communities requesting amendments to the Westfield Central New Neighborhood Plan. If you would like to address the commission, you can come to the microphone, please state your name and address, and we'd ask that you limit your comments to just a couple minutes.
Hi, my name is Keith Walker. I actually live directly across 950 West on 976 South 976 West 850 South. The way this was represented to us is those border cottages would be more in line with what we have. We have single-family homes that are not packed closely together. I know these are going to be closer together than what we have, but the way it was presented to us is that would be like Josh was saying, kind of a transition between our spaces and this development. We don't see the houses from just head on. We walk along that road all the time. It will impact us. It's already going to impact our views. We know that. We don't want even larger 3-story all the way back to the very back, right along the road that we live on. I also have a concern that building larger homes right along that road will mean more parking is going to go out into the surrounding communities. So that's already a problem in our neighborhood. The streets are pretty narrow, so if people park on the road already, it's difficult for 2 cars to even pass through. So if you're building larger homes along that road, we are very concerned that more parking will be shunted out to the community surrounding that. And so this is not what was presented to us. This is not what was told to us. We were under the impression it was going to be a transition between our development and this development. So I am not in favor of that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Chad Tripp, 843 West, 1450 South. Didn't know about this until just a few days ago, so I'm learning a lot tonight of what exactly is going on. And again, Mr. Walker, he'd indicated that this really wasn't what was presented initially. Matter of fact, we were not, as you know, we weren't very well informed to begin with. But along the way, we've tried to find ways to accommodate and accept what's coming in here. And it seems like every couple of months we're back in here trying to protect what's happening in the community right there. And some of the takeaways I'm getting tonight was more square footage. And with that more square footage, it's It's just the ability to make a little bit more money off these builds. I know it costs a lot of money to do what they're doing, and they need to recover some of that. So we get that. So more square footage becomes more people. As you know, there's no restrictions as far as these being rentals. They likely could become rentals, but more square footage equals more tenants. If you have any of you been down there to see the narrow streets within that development, okay, you can't get 2 cars down the road. If you do, it's very, very difficult. And with no driveways, there's no overflow. So you literally have just the space of the garage to park vehicles, and anymore people tend to load their garages up with all their excess stuff they can't fit in the home. So it then results into, again, going back to safety. Directly across the street from an elementary school, lots of kids on the road. Eventually the railroad tracks will be decommissioned, which will eliminate a lot of busing for a lot more children in the surrounding community. A lot more vehicles on that road. The road's already narrow. There's already an issue with speeding up and down the road to wherever it's coming from, whether it's the local people or whatever. I guess it doesn't matter, but it just comes down to safety, which is obviously a very major concern. Again, higher cost, more square footage equals higher cost, less affordable. Some of the stuff they're saying is we want to make it more affordable. We want to allow higher density housing for people to be able to afford to live in the community. That it's a state requirement or whatnot to maybe get some grants or different things like that. And it just seems like doing this is just going to price people out. Things are already expensive. So you're not going to get a less cost for less square footage. I don't know. So with all that being said, and I apologize for not being a little bit more prepared, but it just seems like we're just keep popping in here every couple of months, every month, every couple of weeks on a project that's already a very sore subject for everybody down there. I'm actually amazed that we don't have more people here for this. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jordan Tripp, 843 West, 1450 South. I'm not going to cry this time. I just want to remind us about the viewpoint of 950 West in the corner of 900 South there that meets. If you've driven down there at the stop sign, you notice that the land is already higher than the houses that are all across the street. So if we have an increasement of straight back 3-story, that's my concern is the sight line and what it feels like coming up there and the cars coming up to that 900 South, 950. We always address about the children and the safety on there is having a mass wall of straight 3-story straight back. Those setbacks don't look different to me when you show the different little foot overhang. I don't feel that does much, where if we had the second story or the garage story and then up to that, I feel that kind of breaks it up more where people can see better. But having the straight back up at that wall, I feel when you come up to those houses, we're not driving straight towards the houses. We're not seeing the front of houses. We're seeing the sides. So when you see a side of just walls and no differentiation of that besides a deck or whatever they call that on the front, the balcony, it's just my biggest concern is coming up out of those roads and just having the straight up tower of any car behind and another car, just not being able to have any type of sight line of that. So my concern is just sight line on that, mainly for that's a crossing for children all along that road right there, and any cars that are coming this way. See it every day. So thank you.
I don't know where it is.
Are you making public comment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nick Simpson. I live in the Anthems West subdivision, just to the west of this one here. I've been involved in this project. Just my dad's Dave Simpson, so he's the one that brought this before you guys quite a while ago. And anyway, I just started working with him a year ago. I think something important to notice here is that really the only thing that the applicant that I see is asking for here is that on the setback M, which is the 15-foot breezeway, they're essentially requesting that is made to where you can build all the way back to the garage at a full width at the 3 and 5 yard setbacks. I mean, the way that it's written right now, they would be able to build all the way to the back 3 stories above the garage. And so I think that as far as views go and site, technically you could have 3 stories above M in the breezeway, and then it would have to drop down to the 2 stories above the garage. I think that a fair compromise would be to allow the builder to build the full width back to the garage and then require them to go to the 2 stories above the garage, because that would eliminate, that would allow them to build the plans that they have currently designed, and it would also not cause any other vision issues that some of the citizens are concerned about currently. I do hear and recognize, that the issues with having the lot line at 0 with the garage, and some people, aren't as orderly with their things and belongings, so they may park in the roadway, but the lot line is already 0 with the garage. The garage can be at 0, so I think a good compromise would be to allow the full width back to the garage and then stepping down to the 2 stories above the garage. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Sure.
Chad Tripp, 843 West, 1450 South. Again, the sight line's only part of it. Again, it's the square footage, the increased square footage, the increased amount of people living in these homes. That's the concern, the parking out on the street. As the developer comes and goes, the problem remains ours, okay? You see it on a lot of other builds. I see it everywhere, not just here in Springville, everywhere. You build them, more people, more parking, spilling out into the streets, broken down cars, things like that is gonna happen. The other major concern that I really kind of forgot to bring up was, like you had mentioned, Genevieve. You had mentioned that what's stopping the other units from doing the same thing. Now, right now, they're slated to be a certain build, but so were these. And now it's being amended. Now they're changing things up to accommodate more square footage, or however they're going about it. I guess my point is if you allow this to be changed, then it's going to open up the floodgates for the other buildings within this development to follow suit. When I built my home, I was required to stay within an envelope. The home I built is the one we ultimately decided upon, but it's not the one we wanted exactly. Unfortunately, there was not a lot big enough to facilitate the one that we did want. So we were forced to do the one we have. We do like it. We appreciate it. But I guess my point is we were stuck with what we had. And if you go and bend the rules for us to be able to build the home how we wanted to, or the home size we wanted on our lot, then it opens it up for everybody else. So to me, you have a development, you have lot sizes, you have requirements. You know that going into it, build the home that you can build and make the compromise. So, didn't bend the rules for me when I built my home. So, anyways, thank you.
Thanks. Not seeing any further comment, do you have a motion for the public hearing?
We can make comments after the public
Yeah.
hearing. Yeah.
I'll move
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Move second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so now we will go to discussion amongst the commissioners for this item.
One of the things that concerns me is, you know, we've had, as commissioners, we've had 3 days to look at this proposal. I was confused as to, you know, even reading through the proposal. Not that it was not done poorly, Josh. It was done fine, I'm sure, but, you know, I'm not a building contractor or a developer, and so when I was looking at this, I was pretty confused. I pretty well understand the concept now, but I don't think I can make a decision today about something that I think is going to affect the developer, the contractors, you know, and the city without some additional study. I'd like to come and talk to Josh for a while about it myself, you know, and even in an open hearing, if others want to come at the same time. But I just feel like it's too quick to make a decision, as far as I'm concerned. And I would propose, you know, that I'm not making a motion, but I'm just saying I propose that we certainly consider a continuance.
Okay. Well, if we were to consider a continuance, I would want to consider tailoring this, as we talked about just a little bit more to make sure it's only applying to the lots that we're intending it to, and look at maybe some hybrid options of it applies to the lots where you wouldn't visually notice anything different versus a corner lot where we maybe want some more of that articulation and reduced size toward the back. That's what but
I mean, if the other commissioners wanted to do a continuance, I wouldn't. I'm not personally interested in it, most, in part because the applicant didn't seem to want to be interested in it, and, but also, I don't see how changes to it again, would still be able to keep in the spirit of the cottages. And I find it's very unfortunate that it wasn't noticed that their plans didn't fit the plans or fit the
Right.
requirements.
Yeah.
And I feel for them, but I was under the impression, and have been this entire time, that the cottages were as the ordinance says that they can be. And that they're smaller, they're meant to be for smaller things, and that's partly because I remember seeing them at the very first time and thinking that's something that would fit for my family. You know, there's just 2 of us, and there's the option for an accessory above the garage, which would work for my sister, you know, this whole thing. And so I personally identified with that as a smaller option so that I didn't have to have a big house. And you don't find those very often. And by increasing the width and making, you know, these changes, even if we didn't increase the height, it would still increase that square footage and make it so that it was a different housing type, a different product that would be more than I would then want, you know. And I liked the cottage concept, and I think that these changes would, I don't know how we would call it a cottage, because it no longer could even stretch to be called a cottage. It's just a townhome in my mind. You know, it would just become a townhome, and which is a perfectly viable housing type and product, but this whole area, a lot of time was spent on planning and designing these product types to have a variety, and townhomes are a product type that are in that area already, and so this was to give it variety and to give that kind of a thing.
The only reason, well, not the only reason, But the main reason I'm not interested in continuing this is this thing's been discussed for how long?
Yeah.
A long time.
I mean,
Long
it's
time.
been batted all over the place, concessions have been made, and I do feel very badly that the applicant, we didn't notice the difference from May to December, or the problems from May to December, but I also feel bad that the community around there was not consulted early on as well, so there's been challenges all the way along here, and I think, I really like the original intent that you all put together, and read through it a few times. And I do think that this violates that original intent. And so that's my view on it. It's been battled around so much, both in city council and here.
Josh, let me ask you a question. Isn't it true that prior to this time, the discussions and everything, that they could have had a garage with zero setback that could have gone to 35 feet?
No,
So the garage could only be 2 stories?
2 stories.
Yeah.
Okay. But
The accessory buildings can only
but
be
it,
2
but it
stories.
was at a zero setback,
Correct.
the garage.
Still is.
So essentially, we're not really looking at extending, we're, like you say, Genevieve, we're really looking at increasing the square footage, you know, is the major concern.
Yeah.
And going to 35 feet
It's what
towards the
happens
back,
between
yeah.
the two.
Violates the intent.
What happens in between the main body of the house and that garage is what's most impacted by this.
Yeah.
As you discuss, and when you have a moment, I do have one additional consideration I'd just like to raise that came up based on something the applicant said. So,
Sure, go for it.
actually, probably best if I come up here, scroll to that image. So they mentioned, or Mr. Urinas mentioned that they could face the flush side of the building towards the street, and it would you wouldn't see the setback, you wouldn't see the reduction in mass. That made me think that of something we did in Lakeside, and that something I'd like to propose to you as something you consider if you make a motion, that the open side of the unit be required to, on a corner lot, that the open side of the unit be required to face that side, adjacent side street. And that's something that we've done in Lakeside Landing, so that you don't, so where you have the notch, it's where it makes a difference.
And we have other things in the code that apply only to corner lots, right? Like number of windows and siding.
In
and-
other, in the other
Does that
areas of the
apply
code,
here too? As
in-
far as Westfield's plan, I know that those are in there and they
Yeah.
should carry over.
this supersedes
Does it?
all of the underlying elements. The setbacks are different. Like there's an 8-foot
Yeah.
corner side setback on this, as opposed to the 3 to 5 interior side yard setback. And there's additional discussion in the design guidelines about articulating that the street side of the house. And there's an allowable encroachment there, so you could put a side porch on or a bay window or something to further articulate that side. But is that clear what I was recommending there? I know it's not typical for me to jump up in the middle of a meeting and say,
Yeah,
hey,
so like wording wise, it would be like to require the open side to face the
Face.
street or open
on
space.
a
On a corner lot.
on a corner lot, the open side of the building would face the street side yard.
That'd be more of a code change that we need to put into place.
Yeah, it would be, and so I'm offering
we
that
would
to you. Is
add
that
that
is something
into
that you
the
could recommend
recommendation.
to the
Could we
council?
Could we also stipulate that I mean, we're saying that the proposed amendment would allow them to go 35 feet all the way back.
Correct.
We also propose that it be set back to where there's.
You can make whatever motion.
Still only a 2-story garage area.
Sure,
Yeah.
you could make whatever motion.
And then how does it really change anything? You know,
It
if you've got those
increases the
things.
square footage, and it also
I mean,
reduces.
I would essentially be what Nick mentioned,
Green
is
spacing.
that you would essentially just fill in that gap, and so you would have a 3-story mass back to the garage, which would essentially be reducing it would have the effect of reducing the rear setback, but less. Maybe you'd say now we're taking it from 30 feet to 20 feet, leaving that, but the garage, the whole footprint of the garage can only be 2 stories, and the garage is usually deeper than 20 on the interior. So I don't know exactly what that number would be, but
Do we
you-
have any other product types that have 0 setback that do go the full width, that are able to go the full width?
in the Westfields,
Sure, yeah.
yes, there are like the townhomes, the park under townhomes, not the park behind townhomes, but the park under townhomes do go their full height from front to back.
And they have a 0 setback in the rear?
Yes, I believe, we could pull it up, but I believe it's the less than 2 or more than 20. So it either has to be less than 2, it can go to 0, or it has to be more than 20, because we don't want somebody putting 5 feet back there and somebody parking an F-150 sideways.
Yeah. Good thing. And what's the height requirement on those townhomes?
They're generally 35.
And they're 3-story?
I can pull that PDF up and walk through it if you'd like to see those other standards. I'd be better than me riffing on what I think I remember.
If that is the case, then the only difference, well, then it wouldn't be any different if we approved it as proposed
Any different than
than the townhomes. If they could
no,
go
and then
4 by
essentially you're
They're
eliminating the
essentially the same
difference
product.
between the product type. Correct.
But if we kept the 2-story for, I don't know how far back, is it 20 feet that it now is?
It's 30 feet.
Oh, it's 30 feet.
Well, I mean, it's
So-
30 feet to the main building, but then you can have a wing in between the garage and the main building that we presume could go to that 3-story height. So, but your accessory building, your garage, couldn't. So if you build a 25-foot deep garage or a 22-foot deep garage, that whole area has to be 2 stories, and then the little wing that connects it to the main house could be 3. So we don't specify the height of that.
And how wide can that breezeway be?
15 feet max.
15 feet max. Oh, is that width or is that length? I don't know.
That is width perpendicular to the depth of the lot. So it's from this side to that side, and I can
And then
go back.
how much distance between the main house and the garage?
That's not specified.
It's not specified. Oh,
No.
it would just, it's 30, it has to be 30 feet somehow in there.
This
The whole lot is 30 feet.
from the rear property line to the primary building has to be 30 feet, and then whatever is left between your detached garage and the primary building, you can have a 15-foot wide rear building wing.
And what's the minimum size that the garage could be?
We don't specify that. Most people aren't going to build a garage at minimum less than 20-foot square on the interior.
Okay,
And these plans are calling for about 22 foot.
Yeah, these are pretty generous
okay.
garages.
And the home is also about 22 feet wide.
So it would increase, if we just said that the breezeway could go the entire width of the lot, then it would make it essentially a 22-foot setback from the rear to the main house.
Yeah,
Because the breezeway just becomes a main house.
right. That's a good way of putting it.
Or we could even just say that the breezeway can be up to 18 feet. So you have a 15-foot usable area and a 3-foot walking area. And it's still more square feet, but you still have that articulation on the side, just to break it up.
Yeah. There are lots of ways that things could be I mean, it still increases the square footage, which is,
It doesn't mean that
Different
every
than the
home is going
cottage.
to be that size.
but it could be that size, and that's, and
It already
And,
could be
and
close to
that's
that
the world
size.
I live in. I mean, whatever the max possible option is what I'm approving. And so that's what I have to consider.
Well, what's the maximum square footage on the homes without this change? Do we know that?
I'd have to do the math, but on a 65-foot deep lot, or let's say these 75-foot deep lots, you've got a 30-foot rear setback, and you've got a 12-foot front setback, so that leaves you with 42 feet taken out. So 75 minus 42 is 33 by 22 feet wide. So whatever.
33 by 20.
So 660 feet per floor. Plus the size of the rear wing, plus the size of the.
With 3 stories then.
On the front.
Counting the garage?
Yeah, I mean, when it was first presented, I looked at it as basically a hallway, a covered hallway between what could be an accessory apartment above the garage and the main house, right? That's what could happen, right? You could build an accessory kind of apartment above the garage with the 2 stories.
Unless you provided an additional parking space, you couldn't actually do an ADU on these lots.
Oh, okay, because of the parking.
Because the ADU code requires the addition of a parking space.
So you-
That's an element where parking and flexibility of using the lot kind of butt up against each other.
Gotcha. But you could put just living space.
Yeah, you could put another,
You couldn't-
400 square feet of living space up there, sure. And you could make it a little suite for your sister if you wanted.
Yeah.
I don't, and the applicant could tell us better, but I don't think that you're seeing a huge difference in square footage between granting and not granting. Because it's just that breezeway that's affected. If
Well,
you
if
keep
you
the garage
increase
to
the
2
width.
2 stories,
Well, it's also an additional story over the garage.
right?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
That's
another
quite a difference.
400 plus square feet in that 3rd story over the garage.
Sure.
I mean, I'd take it.
I mean, because say it's like 10 feet, and then you have the whole width of the buildable lot, and then that's potentially 3 rooms, if you have 3 floors, plus another room over the garage, which is four additional rooms. That's a big difference.
Speaking of parking, this additional room
Yeah.
is no different than the detached room. Meaning, if they put a room over the garage or somewhere else, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
That's putting it somewhere else, sure.
Parking will be an issue either way.
I would actually disagree on that.
Why?
If you look at the square footages that are on our sheet, these are the same or smaller than what's already existing, not only in the Westfields, but throughout the city. And I don't see any difference in the number of parking constraints between homes of this size and smaller homes in our neighborhood, or the townhomes that are down the street from us.
It's at the street size, right?
It's the street size, which I've made my comments on that one plenty of times.
But all those pieces need to be taken into account, I think.
Right. I'm just saying, I don't think that's a unique consideration to this neighborhood.
Just for me.
Having a 2,500 square foot home does not mean you're going to have 7 cars in that home. That's a
Neither-
normal
and
size
neither does a
home.
room above the garage.
No.
So my point is, we can't do a room above the garage for parking reasons, but we can do a room else for the house.
Mhm. Um,
I
continue?
personally am in favor of recommending denial and adding the requirement that the open side of the building has to face the street on a corner lot. That's where I'm leaning to right now. I don't know. I would go for a motion if,
Do it. with-
So
with
I'm-
I think your amendment, because you said open side.
yeah. So I move to recommend denial of Lafferty Community's requested amendment to the Westfield Central New Neighborhood Plan to eliminate the rear setback for the cottage lot type and to require that the open side of the cottage type lot would have to face the street on a corner lot.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
I just feel like some changes could be made to accommodate both the developer and the city in that regard,
And that, there is still the I mean, we're just recommending, the city council does have the possibility to, just like we're amending or recommending amendment, they could also
I
recommend
understand that,
amendments
but
to that.
again, they need to understand how I feel about it as well.
Yes, yes.
If I say aye, then that means that there was no additional discussion,
Yeah.
basically.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off in expressing that, I apologize.
We have a motion, and if there's no changes to that motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
I'm also an A. I lean deny, but I would like to be open to the possibility of us having a discussion of what we would like to see happen here. Not just leave it to the council and hope that they will.
I
You
don't
make any
recommend we leave it to
decisions.
the council. I recommend we deny it, but
Me too. And the council's gonna do what they're gonna do, no matter what.
They
Have a
are.
Conversation, we continue that.
the only other option would be a continuance.
Mhm.
But again, when proposed with the concept of a continuance, it didn't seem like the applicant was looking for that as an option.
What do we do in a deadlock when we end up for commissioners?
Oh, one of us has to change her mind.
Go ahead.
The question for the applicant would be, do you agree with Genevieve? Would you rather that we go with a recommended denial, or would you like to come back for a continued discussion?
I think for a continuance to better educate and, give a more in-depth idea instead of a forum such as this, that, we can have a conversation so you fully understand, what we're trying to accomplish. Yeah, I would be okay with a continuance to figure that out.
Okay.
That's not the same thing as
I think
possible
Michael
amendments.
was talking about wanting to understand, a little bit better as far as the setbacks in the neighborhood plan agreement. That's what I was referring to, sorry.
For scheduling, so everyone's aware, that would, or the earliest, if everything was ready, the earliest opportunity to have it rescheduled or reheard before the planning commission would be that February 14th, which would then put it in front of the council on March 7th.
I think we had in our plan that we were not going to meet on Valentine's Day.
Okay. No, so 28th of February would be the next available meeting. And then that would go to the city council meeting on the 21st of March.
Clearly, we don't want to prolong this any longer than we have, so I don't know ultimately what to do here, because if we have the council on the 7th and it's, decided at that point too, that gets us, further along down the road. We've already been doing this for, a year.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, so what are you looking for an amendment from them? Is that what you want to be educated on? Because as it stands today, I think in my opinion, denial is the right way to do it. But if you're looking for an amendment and would like to look at the amendment, that's a different story. And Karen, I would ask the same of you as well. Are you guys looking for an amendment, or are you just looking to kick the can down the road and have further conversation?
No, more at exploring options of, are there better ways that we can write
The amendment.
a change here that suits both of our interests?
Well, as I view it, this is going to the 35 foot all the way back to the back is not acceptable to me.
No, I think we're in agreement on
Okay.
that one.
Yeah.
But I think if we were to go all the way back and have a step down to the garage in the back at 2 stories, that's totally acceptable to me. I understand the concept of wanting affordable housing and reducing the amount of square footage here, but let's face facts. This is not going to be affordable housing. There is no such thing as affordable housing today unless you really start building, what do they call those small
Tiny
houses?
homes.
Tiny homes. Because everything today is, I don't know what the square footage is now, but it's huge. And if we reduce it by 400 square feet or something like that, it's not gonna make it that affordable.
It's more than
Yeah,
400
reduction
square
like
feet.
$4,000.
Yeah. So,
So I ask again, so you're kind of looking for,
an amendment,
an amendment to the proposal, right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it's-
not necessarily amendment. The,
Because you just said this is unacceptable, right?
right.
To go all the way
To
back.
go all the way back, yeah, it's definitely unacceptable to me, but the thing is, I think they could still build, I don't know, maybe they can't build them and not have them go all the way back.
It's something we can, look at for sure, but I think the other thing to remember too is just the 7 feet essentially off that 15-foot wide breezeway that we're looking at is a total of 210 square feet.
Yeah.
I mean, we're only stacking 3 stories of 7 feet by 10 feet, you know what I mean? So it's not an immense amount of square footage. It's just,
If
it
you don't
helps.
increase the height of the garage.
Yeah, but some of that area is not even livable space in some of our plans anyway. It articulates down halfway
But
through the
again,
garage.
This is what is possible, not what the site
Yes.
plan is.
Okay,
Right, because we look at what could be done down the road as well.
sure.
So another option that we can consider is that we, in the interest of not wanting this to take a long time for the developer, we recommend denial and that we're agreement that as it stands, it's not what we're looking for. But we also, with our denial, communicate to the council what it is that we are looking for.
Okay.
And that provides some time for staff and council to work together to see if they can address some things that is to a point where the council's comfortable with it as well. And they may just deny the whole thing anyway, I don't know.
Because this is gonna go before the council when?
7.
On the 7th of March? So then that
Oh,
gives
no,
that time.
February.
I mean, so, I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's just
February.
2 weeks.
So 2 weeks, that gives them 2 weeks to consider what things we did want or not.
And based on our discussion tonight, you could also come to staff with additional options that you might find a good ground.
And then present that to the city council.
Would you be comfortable with that? Okay. Would you like to resubmit your motion?
Sure. I move to recommend denial of Lafferty Communities' requested amendments to the Westfield Central New Neighborhood Plan to eliminate the rear setback for the cottage lot type as proposed, and recommend an amendment to require the open side of a cottage lodge type to face the street when on a corner lot, and to consider other possible amendments to the motion.
Okay. Would you like to second that again? Or do you have a comment on the motion?
I'd say if we're gonna say, come back with other options, it should be other options that don't violate the original intent of this. And the commitments that this city made to the neighborhood around.
Include that in the motion. Would you like
Amend
to
to-
amend the motion?
Amendments
no,
that,
no, she-
amendments that,
she's-
that are in
she's way more
keeping
articulate
with,
than I am.
in keeping with the original intent of the, plan and Westfield's overlay as proposed to the neighboring community.
Second. Write that one down.
Okay, you want to do a roll call? How do you vote?
Yes.
Do you want to add anything?
Nope, it's added.
Okay, Genevieve?
Yes.
Yes.
Any comments you want to add? Okay, then the only comment I would add would be that I would like to have some discussion between the parties of if there's something not workable about this, find a solution that is workable to all of us, that keeps the original intent, etc. But I will vote yes. So it passes. Motion passes to deny the thing. Okay. We'll now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is Springville Community Development requests amendments to the moderate income housing element of the general plan for compliance with the 2022 House Bill 462.
I don't have a slideshow, I just am trying to get back to the beginning, so it looks nice because I have OCD. All right, thank you. So, yeah, had to look good. Okay, so,
We got this letter.
yes, we got our hands slapped by the state when we submitted the affordable housing plan that you saw. And so they'd made some changes that need to be incorporated. We incorporated the ones that didn't need to be incorporated yet, but left out the ones that did, so anyway, so they sent us a letter saying that you're non-compliant, this is what you need to change. And so that is what we've done. There's been no substantive changes to the plan as it was brought to you before and as the council, and as the city council adopted it.
Just adding benchmarks.
Yes, all we've done is more clearly articulate rather than just saying we have a zone for density, we had to list specific areas where we did. So we articulated that
So
the
more
Allens, yes,
clarification.
more clarification, more specifics as to where these tasks have actually been completed in the city rather than just a general statement that this is what we're going to do. In addition, we also needed to articulate more clearly how we would track those and what our timelines for those that we have done, when those were met, and what our timeline and would be for accomplishing benchmarks or milestones with the tasks that had not yet been completed. So that is all that was done. And then I reformatted it so that it was a little bit easier to follow when we sent it to the state as far as where those milestones were, is more in a chart formula rather than just a text. So that is really all it is. But because it is an amendment to the general plan by state code, it must come before the planning commission for recommendation or approval before moving on to the city council.
Is this something that we have or could show to them to find out, like, do we
Yes,
got
and
this
that's
right?
nice. Yes, and so I've been working very closely with the moderate income housing plan project manager for the state. She reviewed it, and we did that particularly because we do have a deadline of February 23rd that the state has set up. So I said, will you look at this before we take it to the planning commission to make sure that it is follows your guidelines, that it will be acceptable to the state so that we don't have to keep going back and forth. They've reviewed it. They've said it's fine. It meets the requirements now. Those small changes that we made then fulfilled the requirements of the code. And so now we can bring it to you without it worrying about whether or not it has to go back and forth.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
And just as a clarification, this is something that we are doing that is in compliance with state law. This is not an optional plan. This is not, we're trying
No,
to get grant
yeah.
money. This is,
So,
we have to do this.
Once again, it was the House Bill 462, which was passed in 2019, made some very, very specific things that cities had to do to be in compliance with the state, with the moderate income housing. They outlined specific strategies, tasks, how we were to go about all of this, and one of them was that we included very specific tasks that we had completed, how those had that fulfilled those strategies, and benchmarks and dates, and that we would maybe not a specific date, but at least a milestone or a benchmark where they could be tracked. Because that is one thing that this state is really concerned about, is that these aren't just plans that are written and then stuck on a shelf, but that these benchmarks are outlined and the cities show progress towards those goals and strategies. And so that is what we've done. Once again, nothing substantive in the strategies that changed at all, simply just an addition of specific benchmarks and tasks delineated that we've already accomplished.
Because the statute says you must say exactly.
You must, yes.
these
In
words
fact, it was really funny. That was
or-
one of the, if you notice in the letter of compliance, one of the first things we did was we didn't use the exact text, and that was because I had abbreviated moderate income housing to be MIH, and therefore it was not in compliance with the code. I was like, okay. So, yeah, fix that, and so that is how nitpicking and specific the state code has been. So.
Which really, I would argue that if it's already been defined in the document, it is compliant.
Thank you. That was mine. Well, yeah. Who was I to argue? I was already in trouble. So
Definitions.
anyway, yes. So that is all. If you have any questions regarding the benchmarks that we've set, Josh and I reviewed those. There's nothing that is not able to be accomplished. And if by some chance those things aren't accomplished, they're things that are like, we're able to explain why city council hasn't met, or we have not received RFP responses, simple things like that for our general plan. That's why we didn't have to set specific dates, but just, first quarter of 2023, this is when we'll do this. We'll be able to explain why we haven't if we need to, but we won't need to do that until next year when we submit the plan.
So these are things we plan to do, but now we're just saying when we plan to.
Yes, exactly. Like when.
What specifically?
Yes, excuse me.
Or how specifically.
Yes, exactly. So, for example, with the public infrastructure district, we did not indicate that we would draft a criteria or draft an application form. And so something as simple as that is creating a form that a developer could fill out. And what the application form would look like. So we've listed that, just very, very nitpicky things, but the state has really had a lot of concerns that cities are drafting these plans and then not following through with anything, so that is why they're requesting that you list specific tasks with benchmarks that can be shown that you've either achieved those, or if you haven't, why you haven't. Okay? All right, thank you.
Any questions from commissioners? Okay. There is no applicant. The state is not here. So at this point, we can open a public hearing on this item. Do we have a
I
motion?
move to open the public hearing.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The public hearing on this item is now open. If anyone from the public would like to address the commission on this item, you're welcome to come to the podium, state your name and address, and we just ask that you limit your comments to a couple minutes.
Exciting stuff.
It really is.
Not seeing any move to come to the podium, I move to close the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any discussion from the commission prior to a motion on this item?
I'll move to, will you take a motion?
I would.
I'll move to forward the recommendation of approval to the proposed updates to the moderate income housing plan element of the general plan to the city council to include task timelines, benchmarks, and tracking requirements as advised by the moderate income housing program manager for the state of Utah.
Seconded.
Mouthful. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes, as does the item. That concludes the items that are noticed on our agenda. Is there anything from staff before we conclude?
Just an additional reminder that we have an open house presenting preliminary recommendations on the reframing downtown plan, the kind of Main Street plan, on Thursday night at 6 here in the multipurpose room. That's a general public meeting that would love to have you attend, and then this Thursday night, and then you also received at 6. You also received an invitation from Carla regarding station area plan, stakeholder meetings, Friday morning. There's a meeting that we've invited you to, and if you haven't indicated your,
When did you send those, Carl?
Just earlier this week.
I don't believe I saw
I got
that to me.
I got it also.
Let me,
I
let
got
me
it.
check.
I was sad that it was at 10 in the morning. But
Carla, are you with a K or a C?
I'm with a C.
I see them now. Yep, okay.
But there
I
is a
didn't
link
see
to RSVP, and that was mainly just so we could make sure that we have chairs for everyone. The community board, the city council, and the planning commission we're all invited to one meeting to come and talk with the consultant regarding the station area plan.
So this is, that's at, the one that's Friday
Friday
at
morning,
8:30 a.m.?
yeah, and then the general public is,
Oh, that was at 10.
invited to the open house on Thursday evening from 6 to 8. That's focusing on the Main Street, reframing Main Street downtown bordering study, and you're, welcome to attend.
I guess I got the time wrong. Is that 8 o'clock in there?
8:30 a.m.
Oh, okay. I was tired. I read 10:30 a.m. So
And, you
can't
know,
do that.
you may have
been
gone,
37
yeah, I know. If you took the survey for the, station area plan that was sent out, and listed your email there, you may have possibly gotten both.
Okay.
Because we did collect all of the emails from people who had said that they would like to, receive further updates, and be kept in the loop, receive further communication. So if you took that and provided your
I did.
email, you may have possibly got invited to vote, and you're welcome to come to vote. There is just one that is more focused on, the city staff, and council and planning commission, the community board as an advisory group.
That's the one at 8:30.
And that's the one at 8:30.
Okay.
There is a link in the, attachment that, you can go and answer some questions as well. And if you have questions or comments or anything about the station area plan, but you're not able to attend the meeting because of work schedule or whatever, please don't hesitate to send those to Josh or I, whoever. We'll make, and you'll have plenty of other opportunities to comment.
And that link is for the station, or it's,
For the station area.
okay, not for the downtown reframing?
Okay. Well,
Yep.
exciting stuff.
Two studies that are just kind of, one's kind of starting to roll down and one's ramping up. We have the same, consulting report, so we're kind of doing that double.
That makes sense. Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing both of the plans. They're gonna be interesting. So, okay. Anything else?
And so we don't meet on the 14th, so the next time we meet will be the 28th.
I'm pretty sure that's what
That's
was
correct.
on the calendar. Does that sound right?
is there a reason we're not meeting on the 14th?
Something about your wife wanting to be happy.
See, my wife would be happy if we did meet.
I know my husband does not care one way or the other.
I asked my wife what was important about Valentine's, and she said, "Well, you should understand that yourself." And I said, "Well, obviously I don't." You want to inform me?" And she walked away.
And he hasn't seen her since.
So I could meet on the 14th.
It sounds like it may, if there was an emergency, may not be the end of the world. So we're all a bunch of hopeless romantics, obviously. But do we have a motion to adjourn this exciting
I
discussion?
move to adjourn.
Sec- oh, you
All
got
in
it.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Can you